The young and the restless spoilers. Under the glittering but treacherous world of Genoa City, the Abbott family once again found themselves spiraling into a storm that tested their unity, their trust, and the fragile boundaries between truth and deception. Jack Abbott, who had spent a lifetime protecting both the family name and those dearest to him, carried within him a gnawing suspicion that could no longer be ignored. From the moment Claire announced her pregnancy, claiming Kyle was the father of her child, something in Jack recoiled. Diane, sharing the same maternal instincts and sharpened caution, immediately felt the same unease. It wasn't just the way Claire delivered the news with practiced calm, nor was it her insistence that Kyle alone bore responsibility for her condition. It was the tangled history she carried behind her, filled with men, secrets, and questionable loyalties. Too many connections to too many lovers shadowed her steps, and in Genoa City, the past never stayed buried. Jack and Diane had survived enough betrayals to recognize the patterns, and no matter how much they wished to believe Kyle's word, the pieces simply didn't fit. So they did what the Abbotts had always done when confronted with a threat cloaked in intimacy. They investigated. It was not an act born of cruelty, nor an attempt to humiliate Claire, but rather the last resort of parents who feared their son was being manipulated into a trap. For weeks, Jack lived with the burden, torn between his desire to protect Kyle and his fear of alienating him further. Kyle was already defensive, fragile, and quick to insist he was the victim whenever doubt arose. He bristled at even the slightest hint that his judgment was flawed, often accusing others of conspiring against him. That attitude made him nearly untouchable, and Jack and Diane knew that one wrong step could sever their bond with him entirely. Yet silence was no longer an option when the truth threatened to bury them all. Jack's suspicions grew sharper when he began seeing Claire meeting Holden in places that could not be explained away as coincidence. It was one thing to speak privately, but another entirely to arrange late-night rendezvous at discreet hotels, slipping through entrances in the shadows of midnight, when no one would think to look. Jack did not know what happened behind those doors, but the secrecy told him enough. In the world of corporate espionage and personal betrayal that defined their lives, such meetings were never innocent. Each sighting added weight to his fear that Claire's claim about Kyle's child was built on lies, her true loyalties tied to someone else. Diane, too, saw the danger growing, though her fear was not only of Claire's betrayal but of Kyle's reaction. He was unpredictable, proud, and often furious at the notion that anyone doubted him. If they confronted him without solid proof, he might turn on them, accusing them of sabotage and refusing to hear the truth. Still, Jack reached his breaking point. The burden of watching his son manipulated was too heavy to carry any longer. He cornered Claire, his voice steady but his eyes ablaze with the protective rage of a father. He demanded to know the truth. Who was the father of her child, and why had she lied to Kyle? His words were as sharp as knives, but Claire's silence was sharper still. She froze, fear flickering across her face, the cracks in her composure revealing themselves for the first time. She did not answer. Not because she didn't have one, but because she knew the truth would shatter everything she had carefully constructed. And in her hesitation, she revealed more than words ever could: guilt, panic, and the knowledge that she had been caught. But Claire was no ordinary manipulator. She had learned long ago that when cornered, the best defense was not denial but deflection. She invoked Kyle's name like a weapon, spinning Jack's confrontation into an attack not on her but on their son. She claimed she would tell Kyle everything, twisting the narrative to make herself the victim of meddling in-laws who had never accepted her. She painted herself as the wronged woman, the target of suspicion and cruelty, forcing Jack and Diane into the most dangerous position possible, standing as the accusers against the woman their son had chosen. It was a calculated move, and in a city where loyalty was as fragile as glass, it was a move that could work. For Jack and Diane, the question that loomed was devastating. Would Kyle believe them, or would he believe her? His pattern of defensiveness made the answer far from certain. In his mind, he was always the man under siege, the one others underestimated, the one whose choices were scrutinized until they were stripped of dignity. Claire's manipulation tapped perfectly into that narrative, giving him someone to defend, a cause to rally behind, and a justification for his anger. Jack feared that by confronting Claire, he had given her the very weapon she needed to drive Kyle further from the family. Diane, equally horrified, wondered whether they had already lost him, whether their desire to protect him had only succeeded in alienating him beyond repair. Kyle himself stood at the center of this storm, blinded by emotion, pride, and the longing to be seen as his own man. If Jack and Diane approached him with accusations, he might interpret them not as love but as sabotage. He had built a fortress of resentment around himself, one that Claire could easily exploit by whispering that his parents would never accept her, never accept their child, never allow him to live on his own terms. The tragedy was that Kyle's need for independence was real, but in clinging to it, he risked binding himself to a lie that would destroy him. Claire's silence and her calculated threats only deepened that danger, her every move designed to push him further into her arms and further away from the truth. The Abbotts had faced scandals before, but this was different. This wasn't a corporate war that could be fought with contracts and stock shares. It wasn't an external enemy to be crushed in a courtroom or a boardroom. This was family, and the wounds would cut deeper than any business loss ever could. Jack and Diane were caught in the unbearable position of knowing the truth yet powerless to speak it without risking everything. To gather proof, they would need to dig deeper, to expose not only Claire's deceit but also Holden's role in it. But doing so would mean dragging Kyle into a storm of betrayal so violent it might break him beyond repair. And so the story hung on a knife's edge. Would Jack and Diane risk everything to expose Claire, even if it meant losing Kyle's trust forever? Would Kyle, when faced with the choice, believe his parents' painful truths or Claire's carefully crafted lies? Would Claire's secrets finally collapse under the weight of evidence, or would her manipulation succeed in splitting the Abbotts apart? The answers lay not just in the proof they gathered but in the fragile bonds of love and loyalty that had been tested too many times before. In Genoa City, nothing remained hidden forever, but sometimes the truth destroyed as much as the lie. Kyle Abbott had always been a man torn between loyalty to his family and his desperate need to carve out his own path, but in recent days that struggle had turned into an open wound. Deep down, he could never shake the feeling that Diane wanted him and Claire apart, and the suspicion gnawed at him like acid. Diane had fought too hard to reclaim her place in the Abbott family to risk letting anyone else hold sway over her son, and though her intentions may have been grounded in maternal fear, Kyle perceived them as sabotage. When a person feels betrayed, whether justified or not, the instinct is always to protect themselves, to defend their choices at all costs, and Kyle was no different. He dug his heels in, clinging to Claire even more fiercely, because to admit doubt would be to admit weakness, and Kyle had grown too weary of being treated like a child in his own father's house. The tension reached its inevitable breaking point when Jack confronted him. What began as a calm, measured attempt at conversation quickly escalated into a brutal argument, each word heavier than the last, each accusation sharper than any blade. Jack pleaded with Kyle to open his eyes, to see that Claire's story didn't hold up, that the secrecy, the midnight meetings, and inconsistencies were red flags that could not be ignored. But Kyle heard only judgment, only the echo of a lifetime of being second-guessed by the people who should have trusted him most. His anger boiled over, and the two men clashed in a way that revealed not just the conflict of the moment, but years of resentment, pride, and wounds that had never healed. It was then that the idea surfaced, both inevitable and terrifying: a DNA test. It was the only way to cut through the fog, to settle once and for all whether Claire's child truly belonged to Kyle. For Jack and Diane, the test represented clarity, a way to protect their son from what they feared was manipulation. For Kyle, the very suggestion carried its own sting. To demand proof meant admitting that doubt existed, and to bring such doubt into the open risked shattering the fragile bond he had with Claire. But the alternative, living under a cloud of uncertainty, never knowing if the baby was truly his, was a torment he could not endure. Claire, of course, was caught in the crossfire. To her, the request for a DNA test was more than a medical procedure. It was a statement that she was untrustworthy, that her word alone was worthless, that she was being judged not as a partner, but as a liar in waiting. The wound ran deep, and she recoiled from it with a mixture of fear and fury. Yet even she could not deny that once the seed of suspicion had been planted, there was no way to erase it without proof. The test would hurt her pride, but it would also silence the whispers, the accusations, and the doubts that surrounded her. For Kyle, agreeing to the test offered a strange sort of comfort. It was not that he doubted Claire in his heart, but rather that he needed reassurance, something concrete to cling to amid the storm. If the results confirmed his paternity, he could stand before his family with his head held high, vindicated and unassailable. He would no longer be the naive son manipulated by a scheming woman, but a father defending his child and the mother who carried it. The test, in his mind, would not only protect him from betrayal but also shield Claire from further accusations, allowing them both to move forward with certainty. Jack and Diane, though relieved that Carl was willing to take the step, knew the price it would exact. Claire's resentment would not fade quickly. Her sense of betrayal at being asked to prove herself might drive a deeper wedge between her and the Abbotts, leaving Carl trapped in the middle. Yet they also knew that without it, the questions would never end, and their relationship with their son would only grow more strained. To demand the test was to gamble everything: Kyle's trust, Claire's fragile loyalty, and the family's already fractured peace. As the decision settled over them, the Abbotts found themselves staring into the heart of their oldest truth. In Genoa City, secrets always surfaced, and lies always unraveled. The DNA test was not just a medical procedure but a reckoning. If the child was Kyle's, then the family would have to accept Claire, no matter how uneasy it made them. If the child was not his, then the web of manipulation would finally collapse, exposing Claire's deceit and vindicating Jack and Diane. Either way, the truth would demand its price, and nothing would ever be the same again.